Welcome to the 30-day novel NaNoWriMo series. Today is day 19. My name is Lynn Johnston, and I blog at writesmarternotharder.com. As always, today we want to talk first about how you're going to move the story forward. Today your characters will be in the aftermath of the second pinch point, and what that means is that the protagonist's forces will be reacting to what happened during the second pinch point and will deal with the new problems that are created by the second pinch point. Looking at your protagonist, what does the protagonist react? How does the protagonist react to what happened during the pinch point? How are you going to show the protagonist's new awareness of his flaw or wound or defining trauma? And this could be just as simple as a single line of dialogue where the character is regretting that they didn't try something sooner, or that they haven't changed as much as they thought they have, or that they are the kind of person that they would like to stop being. It could be very simple. It could be more a bigger deal. It could be you could actually have your protagonist have a conversation with another character about what they're going through in terms of their internal struggle, but it doesn't have to be. Also, you might want to ask yourself, what might the protagonist have gained in the second pinch point that he or she doesn't recognize yet? And again, the second pinch point is usually an event where the protagonist feels really crunched and squeezed by the antagonist's power or influence, but even though they didn't have the ability to pay attention necessarily to the good things that were happening during that pinch point, as they come out of it, they're going to see benefits from having gone through it and survived it. For your other characters, how are they reacting to the aftermath of their encounter with the antagonist's forces or influence during the second pinch point? And also, because the second pinch point was another big change in your protagonist's growth arc, it's something that might stimulate some of the other characters around the protagonist to change their attitudes or beliefs or opinions or loyalties as a result of how they see the protagonist behaving differently. Looking at the conflict in your story, you want to ask yourself what the protagonist and his or her allies sacrificed, lost, or accepted as an additional burden as a result of the second pinch point. And how did the second pinch point raise the stakes for everyone involved, including the antagonist? One of the ways that you keep up the tension in your story and you keep the reader really invested emotionally in your story is that you present stakes at the beginning and you continue to raise them as the story unfolds. So every time there's a major plot point or pinch point, or some major turn in the story, the stakes need to go up a little bit, at least a little bit. They can go up a lot, but of course you don't want to raise them all the way up in the middle of your story and then not have anywhere to go for the last half of the book. So think about the stakes. Think about how what just happened in your story can make things a little more urgent or important for your characters in terms of achieving their goals. Setting. How does the setting change as a result of what happened during the second pinch point? How do the characters feel differently about the setting in the aftermath of the second pinch point? Are they looking at obstacles that were intimidating them before and realizing, okay, no, that's not as bad as we thought? Are they looking at obstacles that they didn't notice before that have suddenly popped up as a result of the second pinch point and going, uh-oh, this is going to be harder than we thought? What new location also is the protagonist driven to by the events of the second pinch point? Unless you're writing a story where the characters are trapped in an elevator for the entire novel or trapped in a spaceship for the entire novel, and even within a spaceship there's going to be different locations. So basically, unless you're writing a very unusual story where the characters don't have anywhere to go because they're completely confined, you want to think about where they're going to move to, where is the next best place for them to go now that they've come out of the second pinch point, and what do they need to do there? And also, before we move on to story promise, thinking about your setting in terms of moving through the setting, what is going to be difficult between the second pinch point and the second plot point, because your characters are going to have to go on the offensive again and go towards the antagonist in the second plot point, which is coming up in a few days. But they have to go from here to there. So what obstacles are they going to have to overcome as they move away from the second pinch point? Looking at your story promise, you just want to keep what promises you've made in mind already about the protagonist's growth arc. However your protagonist is reacting today, and however the characters around him are reacting to the protagonist's inner conflict, just make sure that that's consistent with the kind of growth arc that you've promised your reader. And chances are it is. Most of the time, story promise is something that, even though we're not consciously aware of, we tend to unconsciously keep track of because we have a vision for the story. So I don't think you're going to be doing a lot of work every day with your story promise. I think it's just good to occasionally, every day, touch it for a second, look at it, refer to it. It's a guide that helps you stay on track with your story and keeps you from taking the story off into a direction that your readers are not going to like. Getting started, do your pre-writing ritual and your pre-writing exercise. Do whatever you need to do to get into your story. And I want to suggest that if you're having difficulty at this point figuring out what happens next, if you're looking at the pinch point and going, okay, I know what happened, but I don't know how to move my characters from here to the next thing that happens, I recommend looking at what your characters want right now and look at what's stopping them from getting it. Basically motivation and conflict and goal, GMC. And I said that in the wrong order. But your characters should always want something. Kurt Vonnegut is famous for saying, like, he tries when a story starts to have the character wanting something all the way through, even if it's just a glass of water. So it doesn't have to be a huge goal. Your characters do have a huge story goal: defeat the villain, storm the castle, save the princess, whatever your big story goal is. But here they should have smaller goals, like, I need to stop the bleeding on my best friend before he bleeds out, or I just realized that we have no supplies because the part of our ship that got hit with a laser beam, it destroyed all our supplies and they floated off into space. We have to find food. Or my horse just threw a shoe. We can't keep going until we find somebody who can nail that shoe back on. Or whatever it is that your characters just did that caused them to suffer losses. Look at those losses and ask yourself, how, given that they've just had those losses, how does that make them want things? What do they want? What do they need? Do they just want a warm place where they can get a good night's sleep? Do they want to find a hiding place because they are still being pursued by half of an army? Do they just want to replace what they've lost? Do they want to get in touch with somebody who can help them with a new problem that arose during the second pinch point? They've got to want something, and they don't all want the same thing either. If you remember in the Lord of the Rings movie, when they were going down into the mines of Moria, they didn't all want to do that. Some people in the party thought that they should do that. Some people in the party thought that was crazy and that they should absolutely not do that no matter what. And in your protagonist's life, there should be dissension too. Other characters around him should be saying things like, no, that's crazy, or here's a better plan, or I'm too tired, I'm just going to sit here until I've had a chance to nap. Whatever you think your characters are based on what personalities you've given them and what goals you've given them, whatever you think they want, let them want it a little more strongly and let them be willing to argue with other people in order to get it. That's a fantastic source of conflict coming out of the second pinch point. And throughout your story, but especially here where everybody is basically licking their wounds. After you write, please always celebrate your progress and prepare for tomorrow. Whatever it is you do every night that makes it easier to write tomorrow, whether it's doing your brainstorming questions in advance or making a little X on the map of where they're going to go next, or drawing things out so that you can see it, making a flow chart of your next scene, reviewing your notes, whatever you do that makes it easier, even if it's just as simple as like taking everything off your desk again so you have a clean desk. And I've done this, by the way. And one of the things that I do when I have a big project sometimes is I just have a box next to my desk, because I know there's stuff that I'm going to need to keep track of, miscellaneous papers and post-it notes and, just all the little things that collect when you're working on a writing project, but that you don't necessarily need right now to write today's stuff, but you absolutely do not want to lose track of those before the project's over, because you could need them. So if you are not organized enough right now to have a filing system or a binder where you're keeping everything, and I didn't used to be that organized, I didn't used to have a binder system, so what I did was I put a box. It was like a U-Haul moving box. I put it under my desk on the floor, pushed it against the wall so that, it was right next to my feet while I was writing. And every day I would pull it out and I'd dump everything that had ended up on my desk in the box. So if I ever needed a note that I had written to myself, or I needed to look at the scenes that I printed out yesterday and scribbled some notes on for future reference, it's in the box. All you have to do is pull the box off and riffle through it. And it's not an ideal long-term storage solution. That's like, I would strongly recommend that you also eventually start organizing your writing projects into files or binders or those expanding folders that have 13 pockets, whatever works for you. And if you're interested in exploring what works for you, you might check out the Writer's Guide to Getting Organized, which you'll find on my website. But basically, long-term, you do want to have a system for organizing your writing projects so that you have everything you need at your fingertips. But short-term, you don't have time to stop for NaNoWriMo and spend 3 hours organizing your desk or your office, and I totally understand that. The box is a quick solution for the next 18 days or 12 days, however many days we have left. 11 days, we're almost done, guys. For the next 11 days, if you're finding that you can't keep your desk clear, get that box, toss everything in your desk in it, and that way you don't have to worry about losing it. And also in 11 days, the amount of stuff you're going to put in that box is not going to be enough that you won't be able to find what you need if you're digging through it. So anyway, that's my tip for today in terms of like keeping your desk in good shape so that you can finish the project without distraction. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I hope you had a really good time. Happy writing, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.